Hello, everybody. My name is Nagam. I'm head of marketing of edtech startup Octopi.ai, and thank you for joining us on this panel today. The world has a severe skills shortage. There are 149 million jobs that need to be filled by 2025. That's 3 years from now. To put it into context, there have been 200 million graduates produced in the past 200 years. Traditional education institutions will be unable to fulfill industry needs fast enough on their own, and more pathways are needed to bridge the gap. In addition to that, during the pandemic, we have witnessed what is being dubbed as the Great Resignation, which has further added skills shortages as millions of people worldwide express dissatisfaction with their jobs and left for other jobs or none at all. I am joined by a group of incredible experts today to discuss these challenges and how to bridge the industry skills gap through online education and corporate training. I would like the panelists to introduce themselves, who they are and what they do, and then we'll dive into these discussions. Starting by, go on.
My name is Sudarshan. I'm the Deputy Managing Director at NTTF, Net2 Technical Training Foundation. It's a 60-year-old organization. And I come from an industry experience of about 23 years. Now I'm 5 years with this esteemed organization. So I'm happy to share my thoughts on the industry and institute, because coming from both industry and institute background. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Rajat Chaturvedi. I am from India. I represent an organization called AISECT, which is All India Society for Electronics and Computer Technology. We are a 35-year-old organization, primarily into the skilling and academia, into the education. Seen multiple phases of skilling change and the education changes that have happened across the globe. And it's a real honor to be on this panel today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Binoy Jaffer from India, Pune. My company is Teresa's Learning Center, TLC. I'm a software engineer by academics. I worked as a software engineer close to 18 years. And TLC was founded in 2012. We cater to soft skills training, behavioral as well as communication skills. And I'm really excited to be a part of the panel. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vatsala Ruberu. I'm the founder and CEO of Zero Gravity, an edtech startup from Sri Lanka. So we are quite new to the business, and I'm just 29 years old, and I'm leading a very young team in my edtech startup. They actually belong to Gen Z. So as an industry, edtech is quite new to our country. So our startup's mission is helping all the corporates, the K-12 sector, the government authorities to convert their traditional learning environments into digital educational environments. So that's what we do. So I'm really honored to be a part of this panel with these experienced panelists. Yeah.
Amazing. So, Sudarshan, I'm going to start with you. Online education saw a huge boom during the pandemic, which challenged the role of a physical setting. In your view, what is the role of online education now when it comes to bridging the skills gap?
Thank you, Nigam. We've been talking about digital transformation, technology disruption, and you mentioned the great era of resignation. So the great era of resignation comes from the mindset today, after pandemic. What people think and about the life perspective has changed. So that's why the great era of resignation has started. So before I move on to this online education, we need to understand the definition of job is changing. Job is, what constitutes a job? It's remuneration you get, which is today equal or more than what you used to get by working in an office or factory 8 to 9 hours. So if any job which gives you more than that remuneration is constitute a job. So that means I'm talking about the gig economy, which is hitting worldwide. So even a lot of industries are supporting gig economy in a big way. We just saw in the other track one, more than 50% of the companies are encouraging the gig economy. So we have seen this and the way it is changing the world. Number two, the technology disruption, how it is affecting. We have seen how the mobile phone and internet have changed the way we operate, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G, and moving on with IoT, AI, and everything. I just want to quote one example. We all know electric vehicles are hitting the market in a big way. It means the traditional IC engine automobile is slowly dying down. So what it means, if you imagine an IC engine, if you are a mechanical engineer or whatever, if you open an IC engine, you see a lot of parts in it, thousands of parts. It's not just the parts. The entire supply chain associated with it has got a lot of components, a lot of people working on the supply chain industry worldwide. So imagine 10 years from now, all these going not to exist. So what will happen? This electric vehicle will dominate, electric motor, battery technology will dominate. So are we ready for this kind of a change? So are our people are skilled enough to handle this kind of a disruption? Are we doing enough, right? So many big companies, IT companies mainly are corporates, they have their own learning and development functions, and they will impart their technology, of course, to their employees. But what happens to the people working on the shop floor or in the garages? How do we make them learn? Is this online is the only way to learn, or can we do something else? So I thought a kind of a blended learning is very, very important, not just online. So everything is going online, we agree. Everybody has to move into the digital mode, I agree. But that is not enough. Everything cannot be done online. There has to be some hands-on. Otherwise, the skill content will be less and less. Companies like us, NTTF and other training organizations have adopted technology very fast. So in a way, because we come from a vocational education background, where 70% is practical and 30% is theory. So how do we change entirely into this online mode? What we have quickly adopted, because 10 years back only or 12 years back only, we started giving the tablets to the students. And now the students have a laptop, which has helped us in the pandemic to deliver some of the things. And today, a lot of companies are using the technology available, be it virtual labs or simulation or metaverse today it is coming, or AR and VR technologies to impart some kind of a practical exposure, which of course will dominate. What we have done at our institute is the content, the theory is being digitized. So when we conduct a theory class, so anybody anywhere can learn. But what we have done for the practical, they have to come to the campus to get the exposure. So this, we are bringing some flexibility in the practical or the on-the-job content so that they get hands full. So this kind of a mode will evolve more, and there should be a flexibility. So both digital and practical content is necessary going forward. So I stop at this by saying one thing: capability, COPF, capability is important along with the capability and talent at this point of time. Thank you.
That's really interesting. And I mean, you bring up a very interesting point, because you also, you know, your institute focuses on, you know, very specific, like, you know, mechanical, you know, you're talking about like very technical skills that actually need a hands-on thing. So I'm just wondering, you know, from an online education perspective, is there a role that it can play in terms of scaling the, you know, scaling those capabilities maybe to other people who might not be aware that such professions are available, that such you know, opportunities are available. So what, in your view, you know, how does online education play a role in that aspect?
Yeah, the skill has to be scaled up. And what we have done going forward, we envisage this already, the scaling up is important. So we are working with one of the leading platform provider like TCS, ION. So they are providing us a platform to deliver our programs. What together we have done is we have identified all over the nation the practical training facilities so the theory and the course delivery happens from the central location, and we give a flexibility for the student to anyway go near to his home to get a practical exposure. That way scaling up is possible. So this we are already entering into this domain. I think this is the way going forward to bring the flexibility and agility in this today's digital world.
That's really cool. Watsala, you work in EdTech, so I'm sure that you have a different perspective on this. So in terms of the role of online education, I know we spoke earlier and you were talking about regional relevance as well. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, the role of online education and the regional relevance.
Yes, that's very true. So our role as a tech startup, what we do is we are helping, majorly we are helping the corporates in order to get done their onboarding process, the process training, the work ethics, policies, everything getting converted into digital content. That's what we do. So we work them with very closely, and they are helping us as the subject matter experts. So on behalf of them, we are creating their content from the scratch, and we deliver in different methods such as videos, interactive content, AR, VR, gamified solutions. So that's what we do. But when you are talking about, so those content are very much, relevant to their processes. But when you are talking about, especially about upskilling or reskilling, most of the corporates, if you look at the global picture, most of the corporates, they get subscribed to many leading upskilling platforms which are readily available in the online market. But the content or the use cases or the examples which are provided on those content are not very much localized. So we have got this feedback from our clients. We are okay to adapt those content, but when we do that, we cannot actually relate those content into our local industries, into our local work environment, because they don't have any local use case scenarios. So we are trying to come up with a proper plan. We are trying to build up a ecosystem that we can create a local content series, localized content series, or maybe when we come up with something like that, that is not something we can limited to Sri Lanka. We can bring it to the region as well, because as a region we have similar industry patterns and everything. But if you are trying to teach, or if you are trying to train these upskills using use case scenarios from maybe from Silicon Valley, or maybe from Japan, or maybe from Singapore, I think that won't work much. That efforts won't last much. So that's what we are trying to work out at the moment. So in that case, I believe having a regional relevancy and having localized content accredited by local authorities is very much important when it comes to upskilling in online format. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. And that's also something that we're trying to do. And I think, something else that you mentioned when we were chatting was the content appeal on a generational level as well. So it's not only the regional appeal, but the generational appeal as well. Can you kind of walk us through your thinking on that front? Because also, on a generational front, even on a regional level, it differs. So, how do you go about, online education to teach those essential skills, that we need to fill those jobs, with and educate those Gen Zs and millennials?
Yes, that is very much. That's a very good question, actually. So I'm talking here in the perspective of content creators. So we face this challenge daily basis, because when a client asks us to come up with a proper content plan, content strategy to cater their employees, there are employees starting from Gen Z to let's say 60, 65. So there's a huge generational gap, right? So as I mentioned you before, I'm leading a team representing Gen Z. So the ideas that they come up with are very futuristic, very trendy, because they are the ones who, being watch Netflix and use these Snapchat filters, Instagram filters, create content like that. So the content that they create, the content that they come up with are very much, trendy and very futuristic, right? But when you are trying to apply those content with older generation, I'm not being very, yeah. So because we face this problem daily basis. When we are trying, let's say, when we are trying to adopt AR or VR or gamification into all the generations, that's a huge problem, because we have got the feedback, okay, this is not something we want, because they feel threatened, to be honest. They don't want to accept the change. They feel threatened, and they are rejecting these things. So that's a challenge that we face at the moment. So my opinion is we should provide, if we can identify the literacy of the users, the IT literacy or the content literacy of the users, if we can create a small assessment before we create content, then we can create personalized content, a series of personalized content targeting each generation. So that's what we are practicing at the moment. So that's what we do at the moment.
Great. Now, technical skills or digital literacy are definitely amongst the most needed in the region. But there are also what is known as soft skills. I'm not a fan of that term. I prefer human skills. These skills have not been a focus in the past, but they are becoming something that are a topic of discussion. Mental health has also been a topic of discussion, in light of the Great Resignation. People are burning out, and that could also be a result of the lack of, these human skills being something that people are trained on. Is there a link to a lack of human skills training? And how do we bridge these gaps? Binoy, I'd like to hear from you and Rajat as well. I know you have some interesting perspectives on this.
In the course of one of the trainings that we do, there's this beautiful concept of heuristics, which tells us that the human brain, on an average day, in the awake state, makes close to 34,000 decisions a day. Okay. When I ask this question to my audience, they say maybe 100, 150. 34,000 is not a number people think about. What happens with this is every human being loves to go into a comfort zone where decisions happen instinctively. They don't have to think. With the entire pandemic that came along, the word that really stood out was uncertainty. Will I keep my job? Is my job steady? Will this company still remain? Will my team be dissolved? Will my salary be cut? And how will I like not meeting my friends every day? Those coffee table talks that we have every day, where the water cooler talks, where you discuss about everything from your child's play school to my investment. These were the skills that people missed out during the pandemic. I remember when I went shopping and I asked, do you have shirts? And they said, sir, we're only selling shorts and vests because that's all people are wearing. Even dressing up and feeling good about yourself was an aspect that was missing. With this uncertainty that came along was where people wanted to have, as you rightly said, soft skills is a broad term. There are people skills, but the most important part is human skills. And in training, the example that I give is, on New Year's, we all receive messages on WhatsApp or whatever, and you'll have these brilliant pictures saying something. But if someone sends a message to you, hi Nagam, here's wishing you a happy new year, thinking of you. That's the message that you would tend to reply back to, because that gives you a feeling somebody thought about me. Somebody's thinking and made an effort for me. This bridging in training is very important, where the level of customization, where the intervention the connect that you make with the people is very important. One, you have to tell them, I have done something so that, and the company is thinking about you. This is not for the company alone. In training, the biggest requirement is the employee feels, I'm being trained on this because the company is going to benefit. There needs to be the company and you are going to be benefited. Just that extension, just that extra leverage that you could give makes the employee feel I'm valued. Makes the employee feel they thought about me. That goes a long way. Right from teaching them how to make a pivot table in Excel to how to be a better manager. Everything, the minute I know that the company, the trainer, the L&D team, whoever thought about me goes a long way. That takes away the uncertainty that because they're thinking about me, maybe my job is secure. Uncertainty certainly goes away because there's a concept which says uncertainty is generally replaced by something negative. When I do not know what is going to happen, the thought that is going to replace it most of the times is a negative thought. Same thing with ambiguity. So when you invest for your employees and you give the tools, as an educator, when I go in there, as a facilitator, the first thing I ask them, what's your objective? If it's just a tick box to say, okay, we conducted this training, I say, let's have something more. Where's the salt to this training? Let's spice it up if possible, so that I will also be equipped with the right tools to engage my audience. Else, they'll be out there. We humans, especially in India, will find the most ingenious ways to not attend the training. Under the table, they'll be chatting, and if possible, they'll also have the YouTube now runs streaming with subtitles below. They'll watch a YouTube video while I'm training. And I've said, okay, I'm not calling you out. How can I change this so that you want to attend this? I should not push. I should want you to attend this. And this bridging is going to a long way. Human skills, not only training this, but I think we also have people engage more in an empathy manner. You empathize with each other. There's a point of view, perspective. These things are really missing today. Teaching this right from an operational level to a visionary level is going to be really instrumental in the way we are bridging this mental health. That has really become a buzzword, but it's really serious and nipping into the bud right now. I'm really glad people thought about it now, better than never or later, but it is really going to be very instrumental.
So just to build on what you just said, how do we bridge that gap in corporations today? So, collaboration skills, empathy, understanding each other. These are problem-solving skills. Being constructive. People are leaving their jobs because they're clearly not happy. People are unable to work together. They were thrown into lockdowns, and some people were relieved. They were like, oh, thank God, I don't have to face my colleagues. That's terrible. That's awful, But then some felt, isolated. They actually enjoyed that environment. But if we were to, it was a wake-up call to everybody, definitely. So part of it is the trainings, so conducting those trainings. But the other part is, I think, the corporate culture and the future jobs that we need, that are not going to be replaced by AI or by machines and technology, that still require these human skills of collaboration and empathy and problem solving and cognitive skills. So how do we train those? How do we use online education and training to build those in the existing workforce and the future workforce? Maybe you can just give us your thoughts in a couple of minutes, and then we'll move on to Rajat.
I'll go with what Sudarshan mentioned earlier, that there's always going to be a blend of theory and practical. So I can tell them what empathy is. Many times people misunderstand empathy as sympathy. Say, me going and saying, Rajat, I'm really sorry for your loss. I'm sympathizing with him. But if I've lost a loved member, the way, if, God forbid, I don't mean you, but if I go and say, I know what you feel like, that's empathy. Teaching empathy is really difficult. So the way you do that is through an awareness program. So in the theory, you'll say what empathy is, the do's and don'ts of empathy, what happens when empathy doesn't happen. But then the classroom session, as you rightly said, we are not robots yet. Okay, AI can really come in, but even if with a doctor, people went online, there's an entire AI algorithm that tells you what medicines should you take, but in the end, you need a doctor to come and tell you, it will be all right. Don't worry. Standing outside the operation theater when someone is getting operated, you want someone to come and tell you, I'm taking care of it. That human touch is still very relevant. So with respect to empathy, those human skills that you talked about, we believe in this awareness-based training where there's an activity that is done, okay, in which, depending upon the personality that you have, aggressive, passive-aggressive, assertive, you would behave in your natural form. And you would watch yourself. You are your own observer for the human skills. When you observe yourselves, and we're just letting you say, you know how you behave right now? And they'll say, that moment is very critical. Where you become aware of what you're doing right and wrong, you are your own assessor. Assessment is the key. We need to equip people to be able to assess themselves on the competencies that are relevant for the role and rank. If I can assess myself in a neutral manner, as Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. If I'm true to myself of what I'm thinking and what I'm behaving with, that would be the first step. If I can fix it, fantastic. Or then I'll go to my mentor and say, you know what, I think there's a problem. I behave this way, I have a justification. I have a perspective to say that this is where I faltered. Could we work in this together? The we over the I, the inclusivity, the teamwork, this would be the winning point in my opinion.
That's a great point. Rajat, you had a very interesting perspective when we chatted the other day from a support, more infrastructural perspective. Could you share that with us?
Sure. Before I move on to that opinion, what we had discussed, I would just try to bring in some very fantastic data which is available across.
Great.
If you look at the Wall Street journals or the Forbes research and the surveys, what they have done, they had a sample size of more than 900 plus employers which they had picked, out of which there was 77% of the employers made a very outright statement saying that the human skills and technical skills should have an equal weightage for a hire. Now, surprisingly, once they went a level beyond this, the other set of data where it was almost 89% of the employers who mentioned that they are having a tough time getting those kind of people. So that's where that opinions from all of us in this particular room starts coming in. So if you ask me, there's a big gap between what is required by the industry and what is available today. But the bigger question is that what's required by the industry? Do we have people? Do we have sources to build that? So now, the way that we look at it is that the industry has to step in. The industry has to step in. End of the day, they are the ones who are the consumers. If we look at it from the business sense also, they are the ones who are the consumers. They are the ones who are going to take care of these particular people. They are the ones who need the staff. So they have to step in. It's not only the academia side who can do or take care of the things. So training of the trainers, preparing of the mentors, preparing of the guides, preparing of those people who can actually build these particular human skills. Now there's one more analogy to it. We have a set of people because 2 years has been absolutely locked down. There's no development that has happened. So today we possibly might have the human skills available which is still in line with the IR 2.0. But we are in IR 4.0 today. To learn those skills, you still need to be learnable. You still need to have that aptitude of picking up those things. Now, what you were mentioning in the beginning is that the stress part that comes in, because I know this is going to be a survival issue for me, I stress myself more. I stress myself more because I still have to sustain. That is where the things start coming in. So in case if I'm able to build up that particular aptitude, the problem solving skills or the critical thinking skills which are most important in today's world, typically in the industry part of it, that's where the human skills start playing the role. So now looking from the solution side of it, we have all the technical capabilities that are there in the academia curriculums, there are credit transfers, multiple things are happening. Why are we not considering the human skills on the form of a credit transfers? When it's an equal weightage for an industry, when it's an equal requirement, why are we only having the credit transfers for the technical part of it and not the functional side of it? So that's where the industry collaborative courses can start coming in. That's where those mandatory subjects in terms of the credit scores can start be linking. So that by the time the student is out of the academia, he is almost 80% ready to be on the job immediate. Because every industry, every company would have their own internal things that still the student would have to go through. But yes, at least he'll be 80% ready from day one. Now, if I really have to sell this concept out, let me talk to the industries and say that you are investing a huge amount of money in terms of developing this talent post their hiring. if you're able to do that before, you're going to save on time, energy, money, all three of the things. And that's going to be much more beneficial situation for you. So that's where that we come in from, but it's a core fact that only academia alone cannot drive this particular initiative. Yeah. It has to be in sync with the industry and the academia together, who will have to drive this particular initiative to take it forward, subject to in case if we really want to bridge this particular gap.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think we all agree that traditional academic institutions, can't fulfill this on their own because of the way that the institutions are set up. It just I think this is where EdTech kind of plays a role, and we'll probably get into that in a second. But you bring up a very interesting point about industry, and one of the initiatives one of the solutions that industry is trying to do to bridge this gap is by creating their own programs, right? So the likes of Google and Facebook are creating their own pathways and certification programs to bridge those skills in their companies. So, they've got, UX, data science and whatnot, and basically they have foregone all of their previous criteria. So before, for you to join Google, you had to be like a Harvard graduate, and then they went like, okay, you have to be an Ivy League graduate, and then it's like, you have to be a graduate, and now it's like, you don't need a degree, you can just, take our certification to enter our company, and it's free. So what is your view on that? What, in terms of these kinds of solutions to bridge the skills gap of these large tech companies taking it into their own hands?
That's quite an interesting topic. Let me give you an example today. When we have a candidate who is AWS certified, we are rest assured that he's an AI specialist. When we talk about somebody who is an Oracle certified, we are rest assured that yes, he knows what he's talking about. He is from the database side. So that way, industries have any which ways the companies themselves has created their mark. But at the same time, these are the things which technically in a long run, it's an excellent initiative by the organizations, trust me, but a second level to this can be wherein these are the courses that can be in collaborative format or a center of excellence formats with the academia. So that's where the scope of the delivery still goes much more higher. Now, for example, if in the engineering curriculums, there are certain courses which are apt for the organizations. Now, data science, data engineering, just because you cited those technologies, I'm taking that example, they are huge, they're vast topics. They're vast topics, and definitely those are the things, they are technically the basics of a lot of other organizations too. So now, if I'm able to groom the students with my collaborative experience or the subject matter expert, which we are in terms of any of the organization, the improvement of the candidates is much better. It's much better. So now, to answer your question, yes, this is a beautiful approach that is there, but still can be taken to a wider scope, wherein it can be in a collaborative form rather than working in the silos. So Google has its own, Infosys has its Springboard, some IBM has its marketplace. They have their own independent systems which are operating today. But the moment those are the systems which are in collaborations with the academia, the scope is much more wider. The scope is much more wider, the beneficiaries are much more, and now linking this to the first topic that we were talking about, in case if we are able to handle the human part also of it, imagine the situation wherein we will be in a much more comfortable state of having the skill gap situation being taken care of. So that's where I come from.
So Darshan, what is your view on this?
Yeah, my opinion in education is application of knowledge and skill, what you learn, to the betterment of human being life, and also as a way to live or earning. So having said that, I think this is a welcome move that the big companies recognize skill rather than the academic certification. It's a disruptive move, but it is a very encouraging movement because, for example, my daughter, she is at the age of 12. She knows how to make a YouTube channel and make her own channel and make some games, and she has followers. So when she has learned that skill at the age of 12, without any big academics. So skill has to be recognized. Going one step forward, like we all know that many college and school dropouts have made it big. So name Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Zuckerberg. So they had not finished the college, but they had the skill and will to come up in life and succeed in life. So it is in a way encouraging. Why I say this? In India, for example, the engineering graduation has 4 years of education where we study about 40 to 50 subjects altogether when we come out as a graduate. And the many big IT giants like Infosys or TCS, openly in the paper they have commented they're not ready for the industry. So that's why they have started their own certification program they take and then remold to their industry requirement. Why do they so? Because academia is not catching up fast. We are still in a very robust regulation mode of what needs to be controlled rather than moving with the industry or ahead of the industry. So this is the problem I see. That's why the big companies have started their own programs. I've taken a point from Rajat, what academia needs to do, like Center of Excellences, he has said, to work with the industry. Like, for example, we have done at our institute, NTTF, for Industry 4.0, we have tied up with the Bosch. They have implemented fantastic Industry 4.0. So anybody who walks into our campus knows exactly what all the components of Industry 4.0. And we have a Center of Excellence for Intel, for AI and machine learning. So like this, we have developed a lot of Center of Excellences and upgraded our technology to be in demand. Sorry, one more point I want to make. Also, the other universities are waking up now. I think since last year, they have started the BTech program, Bachelor Engineering, in AI and machine learning alone. So they are trying to catch up, but still there is a gap which we need to fill.
So they're trying to create like these smaller specialized programs to meet these demands to kind of counter that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a good thing, like the big companies are creating the competition and challenging these traditional academias to also catch up. So I guess that's a good thing. Yeah, go for it.
Listening to what Rajat and Sudarshan are mentioning here, I truly feel that it's if I was to draw an analogy, it seems like the renaissance of education, where people who are receiving are asking questions, why? Why am I made to do this? Why? And is there a different way to do this? And as you mentioned, that the universities and the facilitators are waking up and saying that if we do not adapt and if we do not evolve, we will miss the train. So I think, at least I'm really hopeful. I passed out about 20 years ago. I was hoping there was a change. I meet schools and I feel that the education system in the schools has certainly changed, especially in India for the vast demographics. But the fact that even for engineering field, it has changed. So I'm hopeful, if nothing else. I'm optimistic. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, amazing. I'm hopeful too, honestly. I mean, I work in EdTech and I'm sure Wasala is also hopeful because we're both in EdTech, so we're also optimistic about the future of education. But bridging the skills gap also means reskilling an older existing workforce. We have to also remember, about who is here today, not just about the future generations, who also have to interact with this up-and-coming generation. And they have different values to work with, and they need to gel with each other. How do we approach content for this existing workforce so they don't miss out on these opportunities? And how do we also tackle the soft skills aspect to avoid the issues we talked about previously? Benoy, let's start with you, and Watsala, let's get your take afterwards.
As even Vatsala was mentioning, that he's going across generations and he considered us to be very different from him. I agree, you my brother. I have to color my hair. But while in soft skills, what happens is there are 3 types of learning. First is you learn something new. The example that I take is, suppose there's a roundabout, okay, and you're supposed to go perpendicular to roundabout. When someone's learning driving for the first time, I would tell them that this is how you go, and that's new learning. Someone who drives that way, but I go and tell him, Rajat, you're doing something right. And he becomes aware of something that he's doing right. And he's like, wow. So next time when he's driving with awareness. The challenging part, especially for the people who've been in the workforce a long time, suppose they cut through and they're going tangential to I'll tell them, no, you're supposed to go perpendicular. That's unlearning. Okay, where next time he has to go against a habit, an instinct to not drive this way, but drive perpendicular. For the older generation, especially for human skills, soft skills, and even for technical skills, maybe they've been doing something relatively wrong for a long time. It's an instinct where, again, I'm shaking them up from the comfort zone and telling them, I hear you, I empathize with you, but if you go this way, you will kill yourself. Or even worse, you may hurt somebody else. So now, from a language to an empathy, if I'm an aggressive person, but I never was aware of it, that when I'm having a conversation, I'm getting aggressive, and the first point of conflict, I'll tell them, you're getting aggressive. So next time he'll say, stop me if I'm getting aggressive. But becoming aware is a very difficult thing. To accept that I have a problem is the first step. So with respect to soft skills, at least awareness, again, is the first step towards telling them, this is the way to fix, because you need to unlearn. You've learned enough, but you also learned something wrong over the way. Maybe you're biased. Maybe there are some prejudices in your mind. Or the way you've been mentioned. The biggest challenge is, it worked this way earlier. But today, we are in the fast world. Things change. You need to evolve. You were a team leader, now you're a project manager. You've moved from a tactical to a strategic level. Do not implement what you did earlier, 5 or 6 years ago. You need to evolve too. The companies need to now inculcate a learning habit. Well, a managerial training is really shadow learning. He's my manager, so I'll observe him how he does it, and I'll try to imitate it. It doesn't stop at imitation. I got to see how I do it relatively and change accordingly. So it's a continuously learning process, and people need to evolve. I think that is the key.
Just to expand on that, I think also, what is your view on the mindset of the manager versus the line manager versus the employee and the age gap? So let's say the line manager might be the millennial.
I think if you stop trying to be something that you're not, it will work fantastically. If a 45-year-old is trying to act hip and say, hey dude, how you going? He'll say, don't do that. You know, I got my friends to speak to me that way. Let's have a sense of decorum. At the same time, if he's trying to act too much and say, oh, you know, again, with no condescending towards millennials, but sometimes you're in a group discussion and they just budge in, okay? And they know squat about what they're talking. But they'll just say, the nod heading, and they'll just come up with a very random point. And I say, do you even know what you're talking about? I respect your view, but first listen of what we're talking about, and then move on. Here's this thespian of the industry. At least give it an opportunity, because now we only speak, we don't listen. I just tell them, listen is the most important point. So that way, I think age does not really matter as long as you listen and you speak both. You process as much as you do. Then age doesn't really matter.
Listening skills. Brilliant. Watsala, so what is your view in terms of bridging the skills gap from a content perspective, especially with an older workforce? We see a lot of solutions out there focused a lot on maybe K-12, on on younger generations. What are your thoughts?
Yes. So as a practical answer to that, when we are developing, content, or we are delivering projects to our clients, I always advise my team to practice this as a work ethic. Do not feel anyone, do not feel anyone that they are left out. That's what I'm always asking my team to practice whenever they are working with subject matter experts, whenever they are working with the other people. Because they might be the generation who can create content really well, who can make content look really well with all the effects that they are good with and everything. But the older generation, they are the ones who has the experience. They might not be good as, when it comes to technical literacy, they might not be good as the younger generation. But they are the ones who has the experience. They are the ones who are consulting us when it comes to serious subject matters. They are the ones who are consulting us. They are the subject matter experts. We are consulting. So we gain the knowledge from them. Then only we can create the content to transform these traditional learning experiences into digital experiences, right? So I believe this must be a collaboration between these generations, right? It must be a win-win situation to both parties. So if they collaborate really well, I mean, without considering their age gap, so without minding about, okay, you're from Gen Z, I'm from this generation, we shouldn't collaborate, they are so arrogant. Without thinking like that, if you can collaborate really well, I personally believe we can break all the barriers, right? I personally believe that, and we are always trying to give the respect that they deserve it, because
Absolutely.
because they are the ones who gain this experience throughout this time without having access to internet maybe, before the internet age. They are very practical people. So our generation, they are open to internet, they have all the resources that they need. So this should be a collaboration between the generations. So if we can do that, no one will feel threatened, and we can, of course, deliver a better product, better upskilling or a reskilling or whatever you name it. We can deliver a better product to all the generations. That's what I believe.
Absolutely. Those are really, really great points. Amazing insights. Okay, we have time for a lightning round. So before we sign off, what is the one thing we should start doing today as an industry to bridge the gap? I want each of the panelists to answer that, starting with you, Sudarshan.
Yeah, one thing is market intelligence and the strengthen the collaboration with the industries to keep up with your pace and have industry certification or a label for whatever you do, then your employability chances go up for the youth.
Great. Rajat.
What I would suggest is that there has to be a key round of an expectation building that has to happen between the academia and the industry. Because the expectations today are still a decade back what it was, and the things have reformed very drastically in the last couple of years. So post that expectation building in terms of the ownerships that have to be defined. The industry has to own. The industry has to come up and has to own who has been dependent on the academia for ages together now. Now, they have any which ways taken a vital step of coming into the certification and the skilling part of it, which is a very drastic move. But that should not be just as a revenue source or just an initiative for them, but that should be an ownership shift that has to happen in terms of developing the talent, wherein academia becomes a support function, which till date industry was a support function. So that ownership shift has to happen.
All right, so we have market intelligence, ownership shift. Benoy?
I would just say, I would give it in the form of an algorithm. Set your goal, assess your strengths and weaknesses, customize, operate, and be ready to fail. And reassess, and let that be a cyclic. You know, I'm going all Buddhist here. Do not go into any extremes. Learn about the concept of moderation.
Okay.
You know, there's always a middle path. And be ready to fail. Matt Bowman yesterday had a fantastic talk out there, and he talked about how failing is as important for growth. So do not give up if you fail. So again, set your goal, assess, operate, be ready to fail, and go back.
So be cyclical in your approach to education.
I'm sorry?
Be cyclical.
Absolutely.
In your
Absolutely.
approach to education.
This is my engineer speaking, so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Vatsala?
Yes, what I have to say is, don't resist the change. That is my message. Because skills or the knowledge are not something, they shouldn't be limited just because you don't have the literacy or just because you don't have the internet literacy or something like that. Skills are for everyone. We all must be educated in order to create a better workforce. Everyone must do that. So don't resist the change. If you do that, temporarily you might feel comfortable, but eventually you will be left out. So don't do that. We must get together all the generations, because it's not a problem between our generations. We must cater to the betterment of the industries and the workforces. That's what should be our end goal.
All right. So don't resist the change. And that wraps up the panel for today. I'd like to thank our panelists for coming on today and sharing their expertise. And thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you very much, panelists.
I would just like to say this is one of the best moderated panels that have been through. My
Yes,
compliments to you.
It was very nice and interactive.
Thank you.
Do we have questions for the panelists? Yes, one right here.
Thank you very much for this amazing discussion. You know, I'm a life coach and a healer, and I am talking about, you know, we are not a product. You know, that's how we come out after education. And why aren't we talking about emotions? Because we are human beings at the end of the day, whether I'm an engineer, doctor, teacher, or whatever. And do you think there is a need to change the way we look at it? Because, you know, when you were talking about empathy, you know, human beings, we are taught not to be vulnerable because we see that as a weakness. So how, I think we need to educate people saying, you know, vulnerability is not weakness, it's your strength. When you express your emotion, and I hear a lot of people say, you know, at work, you have to be professional. You know, I'm professional, but I know when I take an online webinar, and sometimes I'm sharing my story and I break down. And I see a shift in people. That's the time they connect with me. You know, sometimes what I'm talking about it, they're saying, yeah, we have heard this and that. But the moment I become vulnerable, the moment I become human, they feel that I'm like them. You know, and I really feel that we need to bring that in education, and we need to bring that from a very young age, but yet introduce that in the companies as well. So I was really surprised and very happy that hopefully that change is coming, and we need to see that more, and the message needs to go out that, you know, let's be human first, and then we can achieve whatever we want to do. So thank you very much for the discussion.
More power to you.
To share.
And please get over the entire sentiment of boys don't cry and stop behaving like a girl. I mean, these are lines. I cry at the drop of a heart. I mean, I see a cute puppy and I'm like, "Ugh." So that happens. Am I ashamed of it? No.
Yeah.
The fact, as you said, I'm ready to expose myself to let people know how I feel. But again, do not throw pearls to swines.
Yeah.
You need to know the audience in front of you and expose your emotions only to the people who you think will value and find them relevant. Again, it's moderation. That's
Absolutely.
all. Yeah.
And, I mean, I got 2 boys and I have brought them up saying you need to share your emotions, because if you don't, if I'm hurting you, even as a mother, if I say something to you and if I hurt you, if you don't tell me, I'll continue the process. So you must come and tell me, hey mom, you know, it's not good the way you spoke to me, and we need to continue that honesty, and then I think we can do great things.
More power to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, back there at the end. Very end. Yes.
Just a small comment in addition to what she just said. So I'd mentioned this earlier also, that failure is an undervalued trait, and a lot of organizations and academics look down upon failure. And I think as an entrepreneur, as a startup founder, I think whatever little I am because of the failures I've been through, and because some of my stakeholders have valued and stood through my failures. And most of us are coming back from a lot of very hard-hitting times in the last few years. And I think, yes, as we talk about skilling, as we talk about technology, which can be very unemotional, very, how can technology have a empathetic face is the challenge many of us will be grappling with in the coming days and months and years.
If I can just jump in here in terms of technology. So, Wasala, maybe you can jump in here as well. You're in EdTech. So, I mean, I'm at Octopi. I'm head of marketing there, and human-centered design is very important to us. So, anything that we do from a technology perspective, you know, humans sit at the heart of it. Even the vision, the mission. You know, our mission is to democratize technology to teaching communities around the world. So, it's very important for us to, you know, that the technology sits in the hands of, you know, any instructor, any teacher, any tutor. You know, it's not just, you know, in academia where, you know, they have access to such technology. It's about enablement. And when you enable any teacher, then they can focus on the human-to-human interaction versus all the administration that they have to do. If we think about the challenges of instructors or teachers today, low pay and a lot of work. They have a lot of admin, a lot of paperwork. I mean, I'm an adjunct professor myself, and oh my God, the amount of time that I spend grading versus the actual lectures or preparing for my lectures is more than, the time that I spend delivering the lectures or my office hours or, talking to my students. It's a lot of time. And so if the technology is not helping me, then I grow frustrated. And so the technology needs to be designed with me in mind, not with, oh, well, I think this feature would be good. So human-centered design in technology is very important. And, this is where, AI will play a key role. And this is what we're trying to build at Octopi AI, and we built it. Shameless plug, you guys can see us outside. Yeah. But
right.
Salah, if you have anything to add as well.
I'll just take a minute before I pass it on to him. I'm just taking up from where Sir had just left. Is there anybody in this particular room who can say who hasn't failed ever? There's no one. And the two things that come in continuation just after that is the articulation of the emotions, how we have to articulate that. And the second thing is an acceptance of it. If I can accept my failure, if I can articulate my emotions well, trust me, the failure is very temporary. That's going to go a long way. I have a long way to go. And if those are the things that can be a part of the human skills that we have to develop, that we were talking in the question number 1, I think most of the challenges which the industries and the companies have today, I think would be taken care of, because it is more of an attitudinal part or the aptitudinal part of these particular employees or the hires that come in. Technicality can still be given to them. So that's where it comes from.
Okay, if the time permits, I'll just tell you one story, because this combination between the education and technology, actually it's a blessing to most of the underprivileged kids. Once I met this kid in Colombo, our capital. I think he was 12 years old or 13 years old, if I'm not mistaken. He was selling jackfruit. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with that thing. I think you know. He was selling jackfruit on the street, and we were just stopped there, and because he's from the he's a school kid. Because then we wanted to ask, okay, why are you doing this? So he called me brother, and he's saying, I am doing this to buy a basic Android phone for me, a mobile phone for me. It will cost like $100 in our market, which is 30,000 rupees in local currency. I might have to do this thing for like a couple of months, which I'm okay to do that, because if I buy that phone, I'm getting access to YouTube and everything, and I can learn a lot for free with a very low cost. So that was his ambition. He was saying me, brother, I can't go to a private university. I can't attend too much classes. My family is really poor. My father is a laborer, so he of course can't afford these things. But if I can buy that small mobile phone for me, I can access to many free content and learn a lot of things. So this is the message. This is where we should head out.
And just to add to that, like if you have these different avenues where students can learn, and you free up the teacher's time to innovate in the way that they deliver courses, then that shifts the culture around failure. That starts challenging, well, maybe grades aren't the most important thing. And then the parents start to change how they think about their child's success. It needs to start somewhere. I believe it starts with technology. And when you free up the instructor, they can start freeing up their time to think about how they deliver, rather than, I got to get this done, I got to get that done, and then you're in that wheel. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That will be the last question for this panel.